Welcome aboard to podcast number 5 in the series of the Voyage to Back Yonder. So far, in the first 4 episodes of the series, we've talked about how I got the message that I was moving and what the next year of my life would be focused on. And I shared how suddenly everything started to fall into place without too much effort on my part, as things were orchestrated for a much faster move than I had anticipated. In this episode, I'd like to share some of the ways that the Creator kept signaling me that everything was unfolding as designed. My fear ego was struggling trying to control things, but I was being told to just relax. I mentioned at the end of the last podcast that it's like driving to a new destination. And I looked at a map, so I knew some of the streets and buildings or attractions I would see along the way if I was driving on the designated street and on track to reach the destination. When you see those things, you feel more at ease. And then you can calmly look around and more thoroughly enjoy the journey. You're not feeling lost, or as lost anyway. So these affirmations came to me in several different ways. The first was through other people. During this time, as I shared with my friends of the sudden change in move date from June of 2019 to possibly June of 2018, and then, the end of April of 2018, it kind of spawned us all to schedule time to meet before I moved. I had many wonderful interactions with my friends, but I'm guided to share these 2. So on April 4th, I went over to one of my huge-hearted friends' homes. And actually, honestly, all of my friends have huge hearts. And truthfully, we all do under that protective wall of fear. But in meeting with this friend, I talked about the, do you trust me and do you love me? Questions that kept popping into my head when I was freaking out about everything that would need to be accomplished within the short period of time before I was moving. I go into detail more about that in the previous podcast number 4, so if you want to listen to more about that, you can check that one out. So I talked to her about my journey of trust and of integrating more of what I had learned about unconditional love into my heart. I mentioned how my contract with my family was going to be changing, and all this was the messages I had received. And as I was telling her all about, what was going on, I noticed artwork she had hanging on her wall. They were 2 separate pieces of art made of large letters, and they were hanging on 2 different walls. Faith, family. Oh, wow, that's convenient. And then a few days later, on April 9th, I chatted with another friend about many things over a couple hours, but one huge thing that stood out within our conversation was about opinions. I realized that one of my fears was that I would have conflict with people with different beliefs or ideas than they had, and that I would need to defend myself. But only the fear ego needs to defend itself, because without its beliefs intact, it questions our worth. What came out of the conversation was that I only know one thing. I want to focus on unconditional love. And once I have that down, then I'll focus on the next thing. That was simple. Outside of seeking unconditional love, for me, there would be no opinion that is needed for, anything else. Because outside of unconditional love, it is something related to fear. I'll say that again. if anything that we're talking about is outside of unconditional love, it is something that is related to fear of not being loved or not being good enough. And fear is an illusion. It's an emotion inside of us. So it's like having an opinion about a movie. It's left up to personal preference and interpretation. The movie can mean many things to many people, and that is way okay. I don't have to engage in discussions or arguments about people's opinion about this movie called life. I could just focus on unconditional love and let everyone else enjoy their opinion on their own movie that is playing in their head. I can't see that anyway. I can only see the movie that is playing in my head. In addition to friends, I also had some other external messages through humans that it was not an accident that I was moving to northern Idaho. On April 11th, I had scheduled appointments to have a window replacement quote done and also to have my air conditioner and heater serviced. And the window guy, he arrived first. He noticed my nearly empty condo and asked me where I was moving to. And when I told him northern Idaho, he mentioned excitedly that he was from Twin Falls, Idaho, and he had just moved to Colorado 7 months before. Wow, what a coincidence. Then the air conditioner heater service guy showed up about 30 minutes after the window guy had left, and he also noticed my empty condo and asked me, where was I moving to? When I told him northern Idaho, he replied that, hey, you know what? My boss just bought a house in Sandpoint, Idaho, the town I was going to move to originally. So I told my niece about this, and she mentioned that her realtor had just sold a house to someone in Sandpoint from Colorado. What? I'm pretty confident that it was the same person. Why would my niece have, known that from her realtor? And why, So, okay then. Check. I get it. I am on the correct street, headed in the appropriate direction. There are some amazing resources available to us in this physical and mental world. Our Creator is very creative, and He provides so many gifts and abilities for us to understand ourselves and each other. In my religious upbringing, I was taught that there are things that we should stay away from because they were evil. Yet I was intrigued by the mystical world. And as I studied astrology, numerology, and tarot card readings, it dawned on me that, like anything in our lives, it's all about how we use them. When we fill our hearts with unconditional love, we see more unconditional love wherever we look and how we look. When we fill our hearts up with fear, our minds close and we only witness more fear-filled experiences. Anything is about how we use it. We have tools all around us that aid us in our experiences. And they can take us deeper into darkness and fear, or they can bring us closer to light and unconditional love. Neither are wrong. They are just experiences. Our emotions are a tool for our experiences as well. And we get to choose whether we want to experience more fear or if we want to experience more unconditional love while we journey around in this amusement part of fear. Sometimes we choose to mourn. There's nothing wrong with that. Feel that loss and sorrow to the fullest. It is one of the rides in the amusement park. But when we are done feeling less and small, empty, we will choose something else to feel. And that is the power of our choice. Let me share a couple of quick examples of these tools and how they kind of impacted me on this little transitional journey. When I began my search for apartments, because, I'm moving in a month, numbers began to stand out to me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to Google them, look into their, numeric and angelic meanings of the number combinations. And the first number that I looked up was an apartment in Sandpoint when I thought I was still moving there. It was apartment 306. And that number meant release and surrender all fear of lack and or loss and any financial concerns and anxieties. Okay. And shortly after that, I woke up at 3:21 a.m. on March 31st. So 321, when I looked that up, the meaning was step in the direction of your desires with confidence and optimism, with the belief that you will find success and fulfillment. So those came to me as clear messages that assisted me in looking at and calming my anxiety about moving. I also pulled some tarot cards for myself when prompted, really throughout the 9 weeks from when I discovered I was moving until I did move. And one of the first cards I drew at the beginning of this transition was called the Arrow. And I seldom look up the meaning of the cards in the little book that comes with the card deck, but for this particular deck, I'm always drawn to read it. So I went to read it, and the meaning of the card basically stated that it was my job to be relaxed, yet focused, and not to worry about the how or the exact form. It was not a time to interfere with the manner in which the arrow flies. It would hit its mark, and I would have cause to celebrate. It's like, okay. Well, that same morning, later that morning, after I drew the card, I found out that me moving to Idaho might keep me from being on the team I had applied for at work. But they rushed to meet with HR, and just as I was about to log off from work, for that day, for the weekend, an email popped into my work email stating that I could stay on the team as long as I had strong internet. So little fear came in because Sandpoint was a small town, so I wasn't sure if that was going to be an issue. But after having that grounding awareness of that card earlier that morning, I kind of felt, you know what? I could trust that everything would unfold as it would. And if I was to be with a new company, then that would unfold as well. And that was, of course, when I still thought I was moving to Sandpoint instead of where I ended up. In the next episode, I will share more about how I was redirected to a city closer to my family and more messages of confirmation that were coming to me all along the journey. Until the next episode, pay attention. What do you see hanging on the walls around you? Are there any numbers that you're noticing repeating? Are you waking up at a certain time every day before your alarm clock or in the middle of the night? Pay attention. Inquire. Search. What do these mean to you? Google it. See what jumps up off the screen to you. It's crazy how many messages are floating all around for us if we will open our minds and hearts to them. Our Creator is, creative. And so are you. Enjoy your voyage. I love you.